Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Survey Committee weekly Tuesday meeting. It's September 19th. Call the meeting to order at 7:02 p.m. And Bruce, I don't know if you had a chance to look at the document that I had sent with some edit.
So is that on the screen now?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I haven't had a chance to go through it, so we'll do it together here.
Yep. So just to kind of give an overview and update folks, we did not meet since the last Tuesday. Bruce sent the compiled document based on comments made at the last meeting. And I sent my minor few edits to that today. So I think what we have on screen, so the blue are the edits I made, and we can discuss that. I'm going to keep community comments to a bare bones minimum tonight so we could really get through this document. And we'll try to maybe take comments closer to the end after we kind of noodle through this. But I think we're like 99.9 cents there. I mean, it's like not hardly any disagreement, but just some added text that we can talk about. Okay, so with that said, Peter, I didn't have any comments to question 1. Did you get a chance to look at Bruce's document?
I did not, and so we're doing this in real time.
Can you see that better?
Absolutely can see it. Yeah, good.
Okay.
So just so people understand, I'm going to read this. So we're going to talk about this. I'm going to try to, on an ad hoc basis, if I think there's an easy tweak to accommodate some of the comments we've gotten via email, I will suggest it. I will suggest them. But so just bear with me while I. So they're going. It's a sort of 2-stage thing. I'm going to make a judgment.
Okay. Is there any email? Because I don't know what other comments have come in. I didn't see. I don't think.
I printed out the 2 substantial ones I have in front of me are a Michelle Wolin document and a Greg Schmidt document.
What numbers are their comments for?
A lot of Michelle's look like they're focused on survey question 5, the positives, the thing that Jim Feldman suggested last week, and I found his argument compelling and thought and argued that we should include a version of a positive, not just concerns.
Bruce did.
I know. I think she has some concerns. You asked me basically what they addressed.
Okay, so let's go down the list. So number 1, any concerns with number 1?
No, I'm obviously good with it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I am too. Okay.
Okay. Number 2.
Lisa, just I know you want to keep community comments tight so we can get through this. I suppose on this draft, this is speak now prior to the test. We're going to put this into the field and test it. But folks should know on this call that we're trying to wrap this up tonight. So if they do have anything to say, raise a hand and we'll get them in so that we wrap it up as best we can.
Yep.
Yeah. But let's try to keep it tight. I don't have a 4-hour meeting in me.
Yeah, but what I want to do is go through the document. Let's do a first round first with us and try to finagle it, and we'll go to community.
Okay, let's do 2.
Number 2, so you know how I feel about this surplusing. I hate it. But this is my attempt at compromise.
Your addition, Lisa, in terms of the yeah, I mean, if that's exactly the policy,
Yeah, I mean, that,
I have two suggestions here. And then I will float the Schmidt comment. Um, uh, uh, on the second sentence, the city would then sell or lease the property. I think it should be a portion of the property, or that portion of the property, at a nominal cost, so that we're not implicating the entire site. Okay. And I think that I would suggest this wording to Lisa's third sentence. This is the city's standard process for putting housing on a site that's publicly owned.
I would like to quote, I mean, I think what the community is not a stand is the only. I mean, we could say this is the, I mean, does the city have another process? This is the only process.
Has there not been any, I mean, I don't know the answer to this question, but has there not been any land
For
trust?
public.
Okay,
This is publicly owned.
I don't know the answer. And
No, the answer is you have to go through surplus and disposition.
I guess
Right.
that's even to get it to a land trust. Right?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what. Yes.
Right.
Okay.
So what you're doing is amplifying the first sentence, which is that, or the second sentence rather, that in order to move forward with affordable housing, the city has to
Right.
a portion. So yeah, and I think, Peter, we're looking at Lisa's edits. I think the language that I had suggested, yes, was that portion, or the antecedent being the portion,
Yeah.
at a nominal cost, to suggest that it's not the entire parcel of property. As I understand it, it is that part that is declared surplus. Right?
Right.
Yep. Okay. I think that's right. I think we need the portion, and referring back to the portion is important. Let me just see if I can digest this Schmidt comment. Okay. Yeah, his first comment is this. I don't. I'll make a suggestion about how to do this, but I'm not going down on my sword on this one. He says this phrase, and this was the phrasing that he saw coming out of our last meeting, or from our last meeting, right? It provides no context for the determination that a portion of the property is determined to be, quote, no longer, unquote, needed for public use. As it stands, it implies that the current public uses will be cut back. In fact, the working assumption in this case has to be that there will be no reduction in public uses. The quote portion that is not needed for public purposes will come from the more efficient use of the space, either through reconfiguration or building taller buildings and so on. So let me just suggest this as but I'm not gonna. I don't think it's. I think that this works as it is. In the second sentence, after declare a portion of the property, put a hyphen that says, perhaps air rights of something built on the site, no longer needed for public use.
What?
In other words, what he's concerned about here is that we're suggesting that there is a cutback there will be a cutback in current public uses, because as everybody knows, anybody who's going to take the survey knows, there are public uses on this site. And so
and that's my whole problem with having this question on here, period. But okay, go on. Just tell me.
The suggestion would be to indicate that a portion of the site might be a new portion. In other words, air rights. I mean, so that you damp down the reading that says,
Peter, just restate what your suggestion is what I'm asking. I didn't catch what.
So I was suggesting to help finance affordable housing there. I'm reading the second sentence of, right? To help finance affordable housing there, the city must declare a portion of the property, and I'm suggesting comma or hyphen, perhaps air rights from new construction, not needed for public use.
Peter, the thing about air rights is I know what we're trying to do here, and I sympathize with the effort to add additional clarity and nuance.
Yeah.
Nobody will know what air rights are.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not in favor
Look,
of
I'm
that.
not. We're effectively trying to solve a problem that the city created. You know, and it's their language that is giving us this problem, and so fine. I'm fine with this.
Now, just in terms of our process, I know we want to go through this and keep it tight, but if we're going to draw on comments that have been submitted via email or something, then we ought to just go ahead and open it up for folks who are on the call, right? Because we're going through other people's comments. If we want to stick to our comments and go through this and then come back to community comments.
Fair enough. Let's do it that way.
Yeah, we should do that. And yeah,
I agree. I mean, I haven't seen those comments.
Where did these lines come from?
I have no idea. If someone is drawn on the document, please stop. I don't know. Maybe that's I don't know. Okay. Let's move on to number 3. The only thing that I changed in 3 is what did you have, Bruce? I think you had, and I just did it for consistency purposes because maybe you had above ground. I can't remember what you had. I changed it to surface because in other parts of the survey, we say surface. So our wording just gets a little inconsistent there. So I just said, I think it was.
I had on-site underground parking.
Right. So and I guess I would just say that we keep consistent if we're going to say on-site or surface. Sometimes we say on-site, sometimes we say surface.
Yeah, the only thing, the difference there was, the parking would not be underground somewhere else on the avenue. It would be underground at the site. That was the idea there.
So you were just saying on underground parking.
Yeah. You don't want to say surface and underground because they contradict. They're two different options there. I mean,
okay, we can move on. Let's go. I put it back. This is only change I had in 4. Oh, because this was it seemed like the feedback on the last one was that we had this factually incorrect.
So we changed.
So I changed it to, in the future, nearby sites may be redeveloped and include. That's the only thing I changed.
That's right. All fine. I think the challenge last time was that we said the document we were working with going into last meeting said that the small area plan called for public funds to be used, and that
right.
I mean, I don't.
Okay, are y'all okay with this?
Yeah, so we cleaned that up. Yeah, it's fine.
Number 5, you want me to change this park and availability of on-site?
No, in this case.
Oh, in this case, it's right. The right one. Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay in this case. Yeah.
Okay.
You are me.
Right.
I didn't have any comments on 6, none on 7, none on 8. Okay, so on 9, we might want to discuss this a bit. I put 53. I put the old language in for 5333 and the current zoning language. And I put the feet in red because that was the same 36 feet we had the last time. Yeah, and folks seem to challenge that. So I don't know if we clarified that height.
Yeah, let me explain this. I spent several hours on Google Earth. Not that you have to spend several hours to do it, but I downloaded Google Earth Pro and Google Earth and went with both of them and looked at the elevations at Google Earth, and they're in meters on Google Earth. So it's a rough translation into feet, but this is about what we get. In fact, I could pull up Google Earth here and show you, but I don't want to get into that. It's going to be too much. That's how I arrived at that.
Okay.
Now, the only thing is that the feet here for the community center does not include, when you look at the community center, there's no penthouse on the current community center. There's mechanical in the center of the building at the top that nobody can really see from the street unless you're way far away and you're looking at it with some perspective and distance. I don't think it's fair to put that on there because I don't think anybody can even see that. What people see is the building that you walk by, and that at Google Earth is around 36 feet.
Okay.
Now, the other thing about putting the building at 5333, I was simply looking here for a comparable building that is close enough to the current community center and library site for people to reasonably understand what we're talking about. Because if we go down to 5333 Connecticut Avenue, some people know, obviously, many people know where that is. It's many blocks away, though, right? So I was just trying to find something that was reasonably close by. We could also look at the height of the Avalon, which is right across the street. You know, there are other things we could do for comparables here without making it so that we've got so many that it looks, frankly, a little crowded. Anyway, that was the logic behind what I was trying to do.
And I added K-Fritz back because there were a couple people from different perspectives that said, yeah, it made sense to add it. And it's the only building I know that, so we have up to 80 feet. I know K-Fritz is higher than that, but we don't have like a comp that's, do we have one that is like, of how tall is the Avalon?
I don't recall. I did play with it and measure it. I think it's, I don't recall exactly. But you know, the Avalon, again, the relevant thing, it strikes me, given that we're talking about the community center and library site, are how high are those buildings now? And what would the city propose in terms of a new allowance for height? And it's 80 feet, right?
Yeah.
Then when you look anywhere nearby, we have to go to Livingston because we know there are no buildings that are as tall as the Livingston at Livingston and Connecticut Avenue north of Livingston. Yet it's close enough that people might be able in their mind's eye to look at it and think about that height.
So Ron Eichner has talked about the Garfield as being, I mean, it strikes me, this is what strikes me, that K-Fritz is a distance, as much as I have an interest in featuring 5333, an old defunct interest. It seems to me that the two things that might be relevant are what Bruce mentioned, immediately across the street, the Avalon, and then something that would give people a sense of what an 80-foot building, an existing 80-foot building would be that's nearby. And we can go to Jerry Mallett, we can go to Ron, we can go to Google Earth. We can
we have one. We got the
one.
Livingston.
The Livingston is in here. Yeah, I mean, I put the Livingston in for that very reason. It's the closest 80-foot building that the proposed zoning would allow.
Okay.
Nearby, right?
Do you want to add the Avalon?
I think adding the Avalon and losing 5333 makes sense because we're talking about as close as we can to the immediate environment of the community center library. I mean,
but 5333 is 30 feet taller than zoning would allow. So I'm not clear why that's a relevant example in any of it.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, it's just it's taller. So the Livingston is 80. We can put the Avalon in and I'll get the Google Earth measurement. And I'm happy to do that with anybody who wants to look at Google Earth. We can do it together.
Okay, let's do that before we wrap up. Okay. Number 10.
Just added
added trade-offs are necessary.
Okay.
There's a whole discussion about that. And there's yeah, I mean, I listened in sequence order of the speakers, and we had Will, then we had, I think, something before that. And then I think Cheryl went maybe last, or maybe Ron went behind Cheryl. But I know Cheryl's point was that they are necessary. So I listened to everyone's opinion on that, and sided with are necessary, because I haven't heard anything but similar language. I think Jim might have said we weren't sure if trade-offs were going to be necessary or something to that point. But I think that it's been pretty consistent that we've heard from, DIMPED and others that there are going to be trade-offs.
Yeah, so I'm good with this.
Peter, you okay with are necessary?
Yep.
Okay. Now this was just very, very minor stuff on 11 and 12. No, just 11. I just put this in alphabetical order, but I think there was discussion about putting something at the top with asterisk, but we have 12 in alphabetical order, so I just put 11 in alphabetical order.
Yeah, I thought I'd put them all in alphabetical order. In any event, that was the intention. And
Okay.
let me walk you through this, because we had a long conversation about this. I know several people on the call are invested in these questions, and I understand why. So if we had the prior question that identified outdoor amenities, right? And that are current amenities, not prospective, what would you like in the future, but things now. So we said, okay, those are redundant with these questions. We'll collapse them. We could put a list at the top. We could put asterisks. If you put a list at the top, as I was working through this, it struck me that prioritizing something at the top would suggest or convey preference.
Yep.
It could be a bit of a bias issue. So I reverted back to the idea of using asterisks. However, putting it in alphabetical order, therefore, doesn't mean that there's any particular preference given. They're just in alphabetical order, and people looking at this would know that. And we're giving them, again, we're signaling to them that this is a current amenity if they wish to affirm it as a future amenity. And because we had outdoor amenities treated in this way, where we have asterisks, it struck me that indoor amenities should also be asterisked in the same way. I don't know that if I've got every one of them, though, because I don't know how the indoor amenities, such as they are currently at the community center, are considered, right? So there are some things here on question 12 that might need to have an asterisk by them that don't now.
Okay. No, I'm fine with this. I think it makes sense to me.
And we increased the number of choices from 5 to 11. We've heard that a number of times.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, appreciated that too.
Yep. Okay.
I know Michelle wanted more choices. Okay. We're good with 11 and 12?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. No, I didn't have any comments on 13, 14, 15. That was it. That's the only comments I had.
Okay, so also though, so everybody knows, Lisa, I did add a demographic question related to disability.
Yeah, yeah. Saw that.
And
you want to go over the demographics, because that was a big issue, and just let them know. So I didn't have any issues with the demographics. So you want to just go over what we cut, because we cut back a lot.
Yeah, so previously in the last conversation with the community, we acknowledged that we had reduced from 9 to 4 demographic questions, eliminating race, gender, and various others. So when I was going back through this and looking over my notes, I recalled a conversation we had with a constituent who quite emphatically, with a disability, indicated to us that we needed to ask about that. So that's the reason I put the disability question in, and I use categories that are standard in census questions. These are not categories that I made up, response categories. And structured it in this way, and giving obviously people an option to say they prefer not to answer. In any event, in my single member district, 5.2% of my constituents identify as having a disability. So it's not an insignificant number. and I've got 2,387 residents per census data. So if you do the math on that, you're talking, somewhere around 115 or so people who identify as having disability. So it's, I think, relevant to include it.
I love having that on there. And I mean, disability could impact their usage of the site.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's
Yeah.
extremely relevant. And I think out of, all the demographic questions, this one hopefully is appreciated the most. This was great.
So Lisa, this is it for these things. I know we want to go to community comments. I also want to flag that Susan Geely is on the phone, and when we're at the right moment, she can walk us through the proposed test and how we evaluate and go through that. So just to know, in our meeting tonight, we want to cover that.
Yes,
Yep,
we do.
definitely. That's our goal. Okay, so let's open it up now. So community members, this is pretty much what we're all agreeing on, but we're definitely want to hear from you all one last time. And what I would like to do is let's just start at question 1. And if you have a comment on it, so everybody keep your mic open. And let's just freestyle it. Let's see how we get through that. And let's just go down a list. So don't even raise your hand, just speak out, because we're trying to really get this meeting done tonight. And I want to kind of go through it as quick as we can. But so for number 1, does any community member, and please, if you want to really comment, don't put it in nothing. Don't say anything in the chat. Let's just talk. Any comments on number 1 from the community?
I have a comment. It's Andrea. So I feel like in the previous version of this question, it wasn't stated so emphatically that it was definitely it's set in concrete that a minimum of 30% would be affordable housing. I feel like there was something, maybe I'm wrong, but I thought it said something like the city has said that a minimum of 30% would be affordable housing. I think, to me, it makes more sense to say that, because it's not as if there are going to be developers who are vying for this, and potentially the one who comes closest to what the city says we want will win the day, but not all of them are going to say that they're going to provide 30%, is my guess. We really don't know how it will turn out. So I think stating it as clear and given fact is perhaps not accurate.
So Andrea, Bruce, you would prefer then to say that the city requires?
No, that the city has committed to, or has promised that there will be a minimum of 30% affordable.
This is Robin. I would say that the city has an aspirational comment that maybe 30%. There's
guys,
no. Okay, but there's no.
You don't lump us together.
way
We
to
don't.
hold them to this. So
it's city policy that 30% goes to affordable when it's disposing of public property.
But that's, Ron, that's not true when it's distant from public transportation. It's city policy 20%.
So Andrea, can I just jump in, Andrea, and say this, that I mentioned this, I think, in the last meeting. I had a conversation with Jill Stucker about this very issue.
Yes.
And he has indicated that they are going to include in the RFP, from their perspective, the 30%. It's that statement. So if you'd like to attribute,
he's always said that.
Yeah, if you want to,
I know that.
Attribute it to them.
I still think it should be the city, or so the city plans, will. So I'm blanking out on the perfect wording, but
I have a suggested wording. The city intends a minimum of 30%.
Perfect.
or will ask for, because really
no, it's their intention.
Okay,
at least that's what they say.
Yeah, because,
Okay.
you know, if no one comes in at 30 and they say, well, I do it for 20, the city won't turn around and walk away, I don't think.
I
Anyway.
think would should be will though in that case.
After a minimum of 30%, she said, Andrea's suggesting.
I think it's will, isn't it grammatically?
Right.
Than would.
That's fine.
Commissioners, are you okay? You guys okay with this?
Yeah, it's just we'll wordsmith this later. The 2 sentences that begin with the city, we'll wordsmith it. I don't want this also to be kind of clunky in terms of how it reads, right?
Yeah.
There is the situation, this is Cheryl, there is the situation where Jennifer Steingasser specifically said that it's not absolutely the case that any affordable housing will be on this site. They may place the affordable housing on some other site. All the housing on this site may be market rate. She said that publicly. During
But
an
she's
ANC
with
meeting.
Office of Planning. Isn't she with Office of Planning?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, she's with OP.
I think we have it. I think we have it on good source that it's 30%.
Yeah, okay.
One quick question though.
How about the city will propose a minimum of 30%?
They're not proposing it. They're
Yeah.
asking, they're requiring it.
I think the language intends that a minimum. I think that's a good.
Yeah.
That's where we want to be.
Quick question. As in your conversations with DemPed or whoever, are they saying the RFP will ask for a minimum of 30, or are they saying it will ask for 30?
Minimum.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the minimum.
Okay.
Because a developer, me and Peter went to an event today where a developer, was saying that, talking about his perspective on range of affordable housing and what, could potentially be done. And his perspective was, in some developments, yeah, they can do a lot. So it's a minimum. The developer's proposal might be 40 or 50%.
Yeah. All right, I think we got this.
All right.
Can we go to
Number
2? Can I make a suggestion? And I think Greg Schmidt's on the phone, and I kind of bastardized it. I see at the end of his email, he offers wording. So Greg, if you're on.
Well, I'm pretty sure that this language is going to be, given the edits you've got here, what I was proposing is that the no longer needed is it, as Peter said, I think that implies that it means there's going to be a cutback from what is currently provided. And I think maybe language that Jim Feldman have that says is not otherwise needed would be better.
Okay, so just to be clear on this, if you go to the District of Columbia site where they explain surplusing, they use no longer needed for public use. But we can use alternative phrasing. We've tried to hew as closely as possible to official city statements and articulations of it, but I'm not hung up on it. If we want to say otherwise needed,
I would use the language that the city uses.
Yeah, I prefer.
That's what they say, then that's what it should say.
I agree.
But that's not actually accurate for our situation. None of this is no longer needed. It's a portion of property that is not needed for public use, which might be air rights, it might be whatever. But we're not talking about something that's being deprecated here.
Right. And it's
so that
No, but they are talking about using.
Put in language that applies to our situation, regardless of
No.
these words.
No, it's what is being used as justification by the city, and it should be have the language that the city uses as justification is using it.
Also, a later question says that there are going to be trade-offs. So trade-offs suggest that something might
no,
be
the trade-offs are related to the size and mass of the building, not to the public uses for the.
No, that's
if that's true, then it's fine. If that's what it means, then that's not true because we don't know yet.
No, but
we don't know, but the possibility exists. And
it's
if
possibility,
No,
but that subsequent sentence says it
if you
will
look at
happen.
Ron Eichner's sketch, it's clear that there are outdoor functions that are lost.
Okay, let's
Absolutely. First of all, my
Really
sketch
true.
is just my sketch, but
Then
no
why put
outdoor
it up?
functions were lost.
If
We're lost.
if they take 60% of the space, and they may take more, we are going to lose outdoor space. which may not,
I don't know
you
who's
all,
speaking. I don't know
Folks,
who's speaking,
ladies and
but you're
gentlemen,
wrong.
folks,
There's-
hang on a
there's-
minute. Let's stick to the topic. We are on number 2. We are not talking about trade-offs on this question.
Lisa, can I make a suggestion? It seems to me that I understand the impulse to stick with the city's language. We're already going a distance trying to help them out with language that is not as, it certainly wasn't well received in this community. I think we help them out by saying a portion. So we've done our duty here in limiting what no longer needed for public use applies to. And I mean, Greg and Jim, I think that that's about as good as we can do.
Could I raise another issue here though? Because I think when it says the city would then sell or lease a portion at nominal cost to a private developer, this leaves out the crucial connection. They're not this makes it sound like they're giving away property to somebody, but they're not. The private, first of all, it's not a private developer. It could be a private or nonprofit developer, and I think it should say that. But second,
we had that language in there before, but I think one of the problems, Jim, again, this was because I'm very, if you were at the last meeting, I'm very opposed to this question because of the issues you bring up. But at the same time, let me just say, we're just testing this. So this is not written in stone.
Let me just finish because I just wanted, the point is, it's not nominal cost. And if you're gonna explain, say that to people, you have to say, the city will, something like the city may sell or lease to a nonprofit developer, which would pay for the land by committing to build a specified amount of affordable housing, because that's what's happening. It's true that technically it's a nominal cost, but it's not a nominal cost. That developer will be cost many millions of dollars that developer is going to pay to build the affordable housing.
But there are a variety of financing mechanisms, some of which don't require the developer to pay for the affordable housing. Sometimes the city totally subsidizes that.
I don't think that they would give the property away if the developer is not going to. The whole point is they're going to get the best deal they can, and they're going to get a developer who will give the maximum amount.
Let me ask the commissioners, we originally had private or nonprofit developer. Otherwise, I would say take both of them out and just say developer.
I say take them both out because a nonprofit developer is still a private developer.
Yeah, so private there are nonprofit and for-profit private developers.
I know, but the whole confusion. People are not
so previously the language was private developer, parentheses, for-profit or nonprofit.
Yeah.
Just very clear.
Yes.
And that was already in there previously. So
why don't we just say developer?
Yeah.
Because people will assume it's a market rate developer.
Yes, that's correct.
I think whatever Bruce just said is fine. A private developer, not for profit or nonprofit, gives valuable information.
Just put it after developer though, Lisa. Just say developer and then in parentheses for profit or nonprofit. No, that's good. Say to a private developer, that's fine. After developer then.
Yeah.
Put in parentheses for profit or nonprofit.
But
I'd like to weigh in here.
I could just finish.
I'd like to weigh in, Jim, just in order to support what Jim was saying. As I've said many times, the affordable housing here, if it's 30 units of affordable housing, it's $20 million worth of construction. How the developer, profit or nonprofit, finances that, whether it's Amazon or the Catholic Church or the Housing Production Trust Fund, is separate from this question. So the city is not giving it away. The city is providing the land in order to get affordable housing. That should be clear.
But it says,
Well, I
it
think
says,
that
it
the
says,
proper, we said to help finance affordable housing.
Yeah,
Right.
but it never explains how giving away land, first of all, characterize it as giving it away, and it never explains how that helps to finance anything.
Right, and
So you
Jim,
gotta draw
we
that
don't-
connection.
and you know, this is our compromise, because we don't have, and I've said this over and over and again, we don't have time and space in this survey to explain all of those nuances of surplusing.
So why,
This is a quick survey to try to get at community sentiment. And I've really gone through stretching, and I understand completely what you say. You can say it 1,000 times. I get it. But, we have to kind of stay within certain confines of this survey. And I don't know. And I've said this over again. I mean, how do we keep adding to this section where, we're going to come up with, 3 or 4 questions to do justice. I don't see how
the language I proposed would shorten it. It would just say the city would sell or lease a portion of the property to a private or nonprofit developer, which would pay for the land by committing to build a specified amount of affordable housing.
That isn't technically actually paying for the land.
That certainly is. That is providing something of value on each side. The city is giving.
But it is not technically paying for
it
the
is
land.
actually legally it is.
But the current language isn't paying either. It says nominal cost. It doesn't say nominal payment by.
Oh, look,
Can we make a change in that first line rather than say to help finance affordable housing there? How about if we say to help make affordable housing possible, the city must declare a portion of the property no longer needed, blah, 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 blah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So can I read you, everybody, what the district actually says about this? Because this is where I got the language from in the first place, which we've amended a number of times. This is at DemPed's own website in the section of land surplus and disposition agreements. And then it starts simply by this: in order to support community development, the creation of affordable housing, and so forth and so on, the council has authorized the mayor to dispose of district-owned real property that the council has determined is no longer needed for public use. So it is to support the creation of affordable housing. My original language was simply to support affordable housing, trying to shorten it. That's what the city says. So anyway,
creation.
I don't like relying. I mean, the city are the same people that brought us the term surplusing, which the wordsmithing is not their communication is not their strong point.
It is
perfectly clear.
May I say something? May I say something, please? This is Liz. The city's regulations and laws say what they say. You may not like them, Ron, but they do say what they say. And you can't just make up different language that you like better because you think it's better language or closer to what you'd like the city to have said in its wordsmithing. This is what they're held to. This is the legal standard of what they are going to be held to, and we should stick with that.
100%. 100%.
Lisa, I'm in favor of wrapping this unless there's.
Yeah, I agree.
I just think if you guys put this in and you tell the community that you're saying that the developer's getting this stuff at nominal cost, with the implication that they're getting a sweetheart deal, this is not a fair survey.
Listen,
Jen,
hold on a minute. Let me just say this. Let me just say this, and then we're going to move on. We are testing this survey, and this is for everybody. Part of the test is we are going to get feedback from the people that take the survey on the specific questions. So if this comes back as biased towards that end, Jim, that you're talking about, we will change it. We're just trying to get this out to the community to test it. These questions aren't perfect. They're the best effort that we could do to try to get the survey in a time frame and in a format to get the community to take it.
me-
Susan Higley has already pointed out that this is a thinking question. And one of the things that might incur with the public is if it causes too much pressure on them, they might just skip it.
Right.
So we have to have the question, and I really struggled with this as balanced with enough information to understand, but not too much information to make it too complex and to make people scratch their head and question the things that we have in there. To say, I don't know what the hell you're talking about, I'm just going to move on. So we're going to move on. I think the commission is.
Can I just say one thing that hasn't been said, which is, I'm sorry, the developer, unless it's a nonprofit, and even then I'm not even sure, a private developer is still going to make money on this. They're going to be getting this land for free, and they're going to be selling or doing most of it at market rate. And in
We
fact,
don't know that.
no, in fact, when Ron Eichner himself said when Peter Gosselin suggested
Well,
limiting
they
the
are,
sale,
but what, so what?
he said you can't
Okay,
limit it because the developer won't be able to make enough money from it.
We're not fine tuning the question now. We're arguing. something
Yeah,
else.
let's move on.
Wait a minute, wait a minute.
Commissioner,
Wait,
Can I just say
wait a
Cal,
minute.
Cal, please, we are going to move on.
I'm
Is the
telling you, we're gonna
commission
get hung
okay
up.
with number
We're going-
two?
We're gonna get hung up if we use.
No,
the
we're not
language
getting
all
hung up.
around the
We're
region.
moving on, Cal, and I will ask for your respect. The commission has said that number two, the way we changed it, we're okay. And we're going to test it. We need to move on. Okay?
Well,
And
I
we'll
just-
come back after the test and after the feedback from the community on these questions. We'll look at this again. All right. Number three, does anyone have any issues with number three? Okay.
Yeah, I do.
Wait.
I have one.
Okay.
Oh, is it current? Does it say on-site underground parking? Is that the final thing that you settled on?
Yes.
Okay. then it's fine.
What happened to the surface?
That's going to be asked about later.
It's
Right.
later.
Okay, so they'll have a chance to
Right.
say
I
what they
think
want.
you
Okay.
can't say surface underground parking because nobody will understand what that means.
Yeah, I know. I was suggesting making them two separate things, but okay.
Also, Lisa, for the people here, to everyone to understand, I bumped it from 12 to 15. So that if people wish to do it, they could give equal weight to the 5 different elements. So just so everybody knows that there were 12 points before the 15 now. Let me also indicate something that Susan Geely, and she's on the call, she can say this, Lisa just referred to it. We are front loading this survey, as Lisa referred to, with questions people have to think about. And except for question number 1, they'll still have to think about that a bit. And it is therefore, we'll test it, we'll see. But sometimes when that happens, people say, bang, I don't want to deal with this. I'm having to think too much. But that's what we'll test it.
Let me I'm sorry, getting back to the surface. I'm looking at this question and I know it comes up later, but someone may look at this and parking's really important to them, but they really don't want underground parking, which apparently people have said. So just a thought of making a separate thing for surface parking. Okay.
I agree. I didn't want to fight, but since she led the way, I agree.
Well, I mean, the only thing that one could do here, the idea of giving a category to underground parking is that it is, we know, wildly expensive to build. And if the community is very much in favor of underground parking, then that's something we tell DEMPED, that the community really, really, really wants underground parking. Surface parking is a slightly different thing, obviously. And if we lump them together, then we don't differentiate.
Yeah, you can't lump them together.
So
They need to be separate.
Separate.
And then putting
separate.
another category in here then is going to bump the number of points. Guys, I think we're creating too much complexity here.
Okay. No, I'm good with this. Peter, do you?
No, I'm fine with it. I am fine with it.
Okay, let's go. Number 4. Any feedback on number 4?
Yes, I think this is the last, I gave you all feedback on this last time for exactly the same thing. 20% is unusually high, 18% is more typically, but those are the maximum required affordable housing for IZ plus. They are not the minimum. So when you say 20% of which would need to be, it all depends on the construction methods, and it's very complicated, but sometimes it could be 12, it could be 15, it could be 18, 20 is the
Let's say up to 20%.
Up to, thank you.
You know what? This is a little confusing, the answers, because you have it in conjunction with proposed redevelopment as an alternative, and then to say without exploring other sites, where does housing fit into this? Like, should number 3 be, support the redevelopment of the community center and library only, or without housing added, without exploring other sites? You know, because this proposed redevelopment, does that include housing or not?
That's what number 3 is.
Number 3?
The response category, number 3. I support moving forward without exploring other sites. It's only that.
But
and then if you don't support any redevelopment, so we're talking.
Yeah, see, the problem is some people may think any redevelopment means nothing at all done to the library and community center. And some people may say, I want the library and community center developed, but I don't want housing. See,
Well,
and to say proposed redevelopment in the upper 3, you're sort of like, is that with or without? Because right now the city's proposed redevelopment, I guess, is with housing, but it's not, especially number 3, you're like, well, is that with or without housing?
So, okay.
Or at the last one, say, I do not support any redevelopment other than modernizing the library and community center.
So this question is specifically about other sites, not about housing on that site. And in fact, I was going to suggest in the opening and setting it in the future, we would say something like apart from the civic core, to make sure that it's separate. And that leaves off the whole question to understand this is not about putting housing on the core.
Okay, this is another question where I would defer to the test to see how people process this.
I agree.
We can anticipate
pretty
things.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I wouldn't even know how to answer this.
I would.
But that is going to be the beauty of the test. It will let us know if people can answer it or
here
not.
you have people giving you feedback before you're even testing it, saying it's like completely mysterious. We're going to do it that way.
We're going to have a separate group of testers that haven't been involved in this process to do the test.
But Andrea, can I ask you a question? What's your struggle with this question in answering?
I can't even imagine a position saying I support exploring other sites as an alternative to the proposed redevelopment of the community center and library site. So I'm trying to imagine, well, first of all, I don't even,
in other words, you'd
I
rather
can't
have
even explain what I don't understand because it's so confusing.
Okay.
I would like to jump in here.
Can I
Once
make a
again,
comment?
I agree with Andrea. At this point, Bruce, I have no idea what this question is asking.
It's about nearby sites, adjacent sites, Ron.
Well, we know that, but
So-
we don't know what it's
All right. Well, that's what
asking.
we're trying. You guys have been part of this process. You've been in every single meeting. You've seen every.
No. I understand where this question
So you
started.
know what we're trying to do.
I understand where it was born, to talk about other sites, but now when you're referring to the private sites and they may be redeveloped with 20%, that's another thing from looking at an alternative site to the civic core for this this housing, and the response choices seem to be asking about the latter rather than the former.
I have a suggestion that might solve this, and the first 2 and maybe the third responses we might say, I support exploring affordable housing in other sites, so that each of these is specific, because that's what this question is about.
I know, but what does that see, Cal? That doesn't mean anything in the context of waiting for private sites to be developed. If this is about the city taking action to acquire other sites with public funds in order to put them out for affordable housing developers to build on, then let's say that. If it's about there being private development on other sites over time, and asking people whether they think that look forward to that or not, that's another question. But we're mixing apples and oranges here, is I think.
So guys, keep in mind that the
Can I
last,
comment from a different angle?
Yeah, go on.
Thank
Elizabeth.
you. Right from the beginning, I have found this question confusing, but when I say from a different angle, it doesn't have to do with housing. It has to do with this, which is, if I'm asked if I want the Safeway site redeveloped, well, that depends. Is there going to be no Safeway? Is there going to be a new Safeway? I don't know what that means.
Yeah, that's.
And it would depend on what is that grocery store gone?
okay,
Yeah.
let me give everybody an
You
alternative.
see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Yes.
we do. So let me just give you an alternative version that you'll recall from our prior meetings and conversations, which some had issues with, which is why we developed yet another version. But the prior question was simply to affirm which is the small area plan, what the city's intentions are regarding redevelopment of nearby private sites over time, such as Safeway and Wells Fargo, leaving the details aside, but nonetheless, that's what the city intends to do, to include additional housing. And the question was a yes/no question. Would you support including nearby sites now in the proposed redevelopment to spread achieving the city's housing goals across several sites? Yes or no, or I have no opinion, or I don't have enough information to make the choice.
I think that's a clear question from
I
my,
think it's a useless question, though.
maybe useless. I don't know.
But here's again the reason why we had it, just to hark back and so we don't lose the thread entirely here.
Mhm.
We know that many people have said, why does the housing the city intends to develop in Chevy Chase, Upper Connecticut Avenue, have to go at a site where we thought all along we were going to get a new community center and library? You've heard this a million times, right?
Yeah.
And so people like Councilmember Fruman have said, we need to think about nearby, he says adjacent, they're not technically adjacent, they're across the street, whatever, sites. So that's in the public discourse, nearby sites. That's why we thought it was relevant to have a question. If now we're saying it's too complex, it can't be conveyed simply, we don't really think it matters, then take the question out.
Actually, no version of the question has asked the question that I would have asked. It seems to me that there are people who think, why can't we develop housing on an adjacent site, to use that term, instead of on the civic core, you see, as an alternative. But this question doesn't ask that question. It asks a different question that it's kind of like it's already been stated in the small area plan. And nothing that we say really is going to change anything because, well, I don't think it will. Anyway,
But
to me,
Andrea,
the real question is not being asked.
Andrea, there's so many places in the survey where you get to say, I do not support affordable housing on the site. Or
Correct.
I do not support any
Yes.
housing on the site. So
Okay, so
that's
we
not-
could just
what
do
you're
away
saying
with
is
it.
not, it rings a bit hollow.
I wasn't saying that that position wasn't expressed. It's simply that originally I thought the divide was between people who said, let's get an associated site to develop also, and let's put more housing versus let's put the housing over there. To me, that was the question. Which one do you support? If that's not going to be asked, then I don't know what the point of this question is, frankly.
Okay, let's Commissioner Gosselin, let me hear from you. And
to Elizabeth Pike's concern, I think that the question suggests that the affordable housing would not be instead. It says maybe redeveloped and include. So it doesn't wipe out the current uses or whatever future uses are made. To Andrea's point, given what Cal said, that there are so many other places where you could say no affordable housing or no housing on the civic site. I mean, here we offered them the alternative of redevelopment elsewhere. I think that we ought to test it, and I think that I'd be happy to put. I support exploring the Cal's suggestion of affordable housing on sites in conjunction with the proposed redevelopment of the community center library. But I think we might as well test it as it is. If it's confusing, we can lose it.
Bruce, do you concur?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. Yeah.
Okay, let's keep that. Okay, again, we will come back to these if we find significant issues on testing, or I wouldn't even say significant. If we're having issues with it at testing, we'll revisit it. Number 5.
Yeah, I have some comments on this. I think if you could go, I think the first part was off the screen. So my comments that I sent to you today, get into why I think it is not good to put, these supposed public benefits. For one thing, fostering social and racial equity, no guarantee of that. If it's mostly market rate housing or it's 80%, it won't necessarily be fostering, diversity or whatever. Easing a citywide housing shortage. There is so much housing being built all over the city. Recent headline in BizNow was the city is facing overdevelopment, a huge apartment pipeline while its leasing is flat. Enhancing neighborhood vitality and business activity. I walk along the blocks where we have apartments. Believe me, there is not all this liveliness there, not at all. Frankly, you get more liveliness in improving your community center to give more offerings and have good outdoor recreation space and a park-like atmosphere and business activity. Our businesses are doing fine. Even the Office of Planning said that. I walked along the other day, all the outdoor restaurants are full or almost full except Blue 44. This is sort of, it's kind of like, this will be a wonderful thing. We can get, this is just.
It's a loaded question. It's a slightly loaded question.
I just
that is just nonsense. It's no more loaded than the impacts. These are accepted, consequences of developing in this manner, in this kind of neighborhood. If you want to discount the benefit to, let's say there's 30 or 50 affordable units here. If you want to discount the benefit of in terms of social and racial equity, feel free to do so, but you would be wrong. The 50 families that would move in would appreciate the opportunity. Easing the citywide shortage, there is currently the Rock Creek West has 4.7% of its goal in dedicated affordable housing.
But we also have rent control and voucher recipients.
And yes, there are other things. That's
it's
not dedicated,
but it is affordable.
Right.
It's affordable to the people who live there. It is not dedicated to an income,
exactly
tied to
that is just
income.
Really deliberate.
It's no more expensive than what we're talking about.
If I could add something to this, I think actually just a little bit to the contrary, that I think that these statements of the benefits, first of all, remember, these are benefits of, what does the first sentence say? The proposed redevelopment of the Chevy Chase Community Center and Library site to modernize the facilities and include housing. They're not the benefits of housing, they're the benefits of redevelopment. So of course they should include enhancing neighborhood vitality and business activity. But from my point of view, they could be much more robustly stated. And if you're going to include the kinds of, quote, concerns that are at the bottom, like inadequate sewerage facilities or inadequate electricity, as if somebody's going to build this buildings without putting in enough electricity, then I think you could do a little bit better job of saying something a little bit more forceful about what the benefits are. Like,
Can I
Like
suggest-
what, Jim? What's missing?
well, like another one would be, you know, opening the library and community, making the library and community safer by opening them to Connecticut Avenue rather than requiring people to go into a dark, rat-infested interior to get there.
Oh,
I've never
please.
seen a rat there.
Really, there aren't, it's not dark and it's not rat
It is
infested.
definitely
The
dark.
library is perfectly
That's a bunch of
situated on
baloney.
Connecticut Avenue.
I'm
Anyhow, we
sorry,
could
that
argue
is
about all
just-
these
I
specifics,
draw the
but
line there.
I guess
That
really
is wrong.
the point is not arguing about, because look, there are things that you guys might think are problems that I don't think, and there are things that I think are benefits that you don't think. That's just the way it's going to be. We don't. That's
If
why
you
I
want
don't wanna
rat
argue about this.
infested, go to
But I just
Petworth,
think
because
if I
that's
don't
really
want,
what you're
I
promoting.
don't. But what I actually do want to discuss is, I just feel like if you have statements of the things that are possibly bad, you should have equally robust statements of the things that are possibly good.
Okay.
The issue,
We may not all
Lisa,
agree on
I-
those.
Lisa,
The
can I
issue is-
jump in? Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry. I need to jump in because Susan Geely, our consultant, can't be with us much longer. And I did want her to be able to comment on the test and how we're going to conduct the test. So she's got
Sure.
to roll off, Lisa. If we could just let her do
Yeah,
that.
let's let her do that. And I think we can, just safely say number 5 is okay. I think the
Can I just say one thing though?
yeah,
The
but hang on,
fact
Andrea, before let's let Susan talk so she can jump off, because we don't want to miss this opportunity to inform you all how this is going to work.
Yeah, thanks. And sorry can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt the good discussion. No, the idea is because this test is really important because these are not easy questions. So we really do need to make sure that people understand them, that they feel that their views are incorporated into the response categories, and that we're living up to the promise that the whole survey is going to take 10 minutes to complete. Otherwise, we have to change that, right? In the introduction. But the idea is that step 1, this has to be programmed into SurveyMonkey, and I understand, Bruce, like you'll take that part, because part of this is a technical test, right? So you have the questions there, and the idea is just to keep this as low tech as possible. The very simple paper questionnaire that for each question, once I'm not going to touch upon who you're going to recruit to actually do the pilot, right, Bruce? Like that's a separate question.
Yeah.
Okay. So that, let's say there are about 20 people or so that will do this, then they will take the survey on their phones or on their laptops. It should be a mix. And then for each question, they will answer 5 very quick questions. So, and this is a draft. The first question is, was this easy for you to understand? Yes or no? They circle 1. What, if anything, was unclear to you? If no, if it wasn't easy, then what, if anything, was unclear to you? And they have a little space they can write. Was your point of view included in the response categories? Yes or no? If you answered yes to the previous question, what response category would you like to include? Or would you like to see included? And then the 5th question, what suggestions, if any, do you have to improve this question? So for each of the, I guess it's 12,
What was
13.
the last one? What was the last one?
What suggestions do you have to improve this question? So keeping it pretty, short and sweet.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, and then when they complete it, there are 5 additional short questions. Overall, how easy did you find it to complete the survey? Very easy, somewhat difficult, very difficult. At any point, were you inclined to not complete the survey? That's my concern about that question 2.
Yeah.
Honestly, my personal opinion, if I got to question 2, I'd say this survey is not for me, and I would drop off. But that's me. People are different. The 3rd question, did you have any technical difficulties completing the survey on your laptop or phone? Yes or no? If you answered yes, what was the nature of your technical difficulties? And lastly, approximately how long do you think it will take respondents to complete the survey?
Okay.
So, I mean, we can tinker with this, but this idea, so you get quick feedback, do people understand? what you're asking? Do they feel that their views are represented? Or, you know, is it taking too much time? Like all these things, so that when you actually launch it, you're optimizing, you're maximizing the chances of a decent response rate.
You'll send those to us, will you?
Yes.
That's great. Thanks.
And just to fill in the gap there about how we would select people, we had said before that each commissioner could select X number of people. There would be people who have not been part of the process, though, right? So people that are just people we know.
Yeah.
And maybe some of you have had people who say, hey, I'd like to be part of your test or whatever. So that would be it. There's no magic number in terms of the total, but it doesn't need to be a huge number. There are 7 commissioners. Maybe it could be, you know, 4 to 5 per commissioner, whatever. So that's basically how we'd go about the developing the pool of people to take it.
Yeah, and the less they know about the development of the survey and the issue, the better. Like you really do want it to be like the average person, the more typical person in the community.
Any questions before Susan has to run?
Cal and Elizabeth.
Yeah, so I'm not a fan of binary yes/no questions, and particularly the one that strikes is the one that says, was your point of view represented in the survey? Because they might have a representative for 95% of it, but not this one thing. And how do they answer that? So can we make a spread of, you know, range of options that says completely on one end, not all on the other end?
But that was for one question.
That's
Cal.
just for each question. So it's actually for each question. So it is, yeah. Do they feel, you know, do they have a point of view that wasn't represented in the response categories?
Oh, you're going to have that for each of
each question. So for each question, for the pilot, that's why, yeah, we need people who can, who have the time to not only answer the questions on the survey, but answer the questions, evaluating the questions.
They're going to say for question 5, was your opinion?
Yes, yes. And I have a grid. It's basically, we'll format it so it's not so onerous.
Thank you.
Elizabeth?
No, I didn't have a question.
Okay, great. Okay.
I had a comment on number 5, but not for Susan.
Okay, Susan, that sounds great.
Okay, I'll share with commissioners what the draft.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Susan.
All right, bye.
Yeah, that's why I say we got a ways to go, folks. So I mean, some of these questions we might, you know, through that survey process, have to revisit. So don't get too bent out of shape if we don't make your change at this point. So we were on number 5. Elizabeth, you had a question, and I see Andrea's hand. You want to go on?
Yes, thank you. Where that opening paragraph says, states as a benefit that it enhances neighborhood vitality. I think a lot of us feel that to lose public common space harms neighborhood vitality. So I don't think that should be stated as a given.
The projection.
Hey, Lisa, can I jump in here just really quickly so that everyone understands the formulation or the reformulation of this? We took Jim Feldman's comments last time about including positive impacts as opposed to negative. I tried to make that work in the context of the evaluation that we had for the impacts here. I expressed my opinion last time that impacts are not negative. They are what they are. It's not negative that there would need to be perhaps additional capacity at Lafayette Elementary School. It's just something that the community would have to prepare for, the city would have to prepare for. That being said, I thought it made the most sense to go ahead and incorporate his criteria into the question stem to say, essentially, this is why the city is proposing this initiative. These are the projected public benefits, projected, hoped for, desired.
Yeah.
And at the same time, any redevelopment would have public impacts. And so that's the setup of this for everybody to understand. He also expressed a view that using concern was negative, so I changed it to significant.
Right.
So there have been these changes, Jim and others, based on the conversation we had last time, just to put a frame around this.
Okay. Peter, do you have any
Yeah,
Thoughts on this?
I just want to say to Elizabeth and others, I agree with Jim Feldman that and I disagree with Bruce that the list below, which you can rate as significant to not significant or you don't know, includes some very negative things. Public safety, impacts on public safety are in general, negative, particularly in the list there. And so I believe we need to, in order to try, as best we can as homemade survey makers, we need to have balance. And what Bruce has done with the lead-in to the question, I think is a fair way to try to get some of that. And Elizabeth, there are many other places where in this survey where you can address the issue of what loss of public space would do, and presumably your objections to loss of public space, if there is going to be loss of public space.
I'd like to add, out of fairness here, I think both sides need to cut some slack to the other side. Those of us who know the processes for building things know that a lot of these impacts that are listed here are dealt with in the whole building permit and public review process. But not going to argue about it. We know that if people want to say that infrastructure is a problem, fine, you can say it. Give the people who are listing the benefits a little bit of a benefit of the doubt also, that these are things that are commonly seen as benefits of this sort of redevelopment, and list them and let the people taking the survey read both, make up their minds, do their rating, and move on.
What do you mean by the other side? I don't
So-
understand. What does he mean by the other side?
I don't know.
I mean,
Listen,
you're.
hang on a minute.
I think we press on.
Commissioners,
Okay,
yeah.
no.
Commissioners,
Wait,
any commissioner wants to change this?
No.
Okay, let's move
Wait,
on.
wait,
I
no.
agree. I think it's
I have a
pretty-
separate comment about this, please, on the options. No, really, this is the parking thing. Okay, I think it's very confusing to have I would just say parking availability, period, rather than put in surface or new underground parking, because someone may, what does it mean to say, I'm concerned about new underground? This would go back better the other thing. But also people may think, oh, if there's underground parking, there'll be tons of parking, like in Bethesda.
Okay.
That's not going to be the case. So just say parking availability.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think, I agree.
I think we can make that change if you want. That's fine.
Yes. Makes a lot more sense.
Okay.
Okay, so let's go to number 6. Let me bring this down on one so it's together and you guys could see it. Number 6.
Can you go back? There's a little paragraph in there that we didn't cover.
No, we're not covering that. That's just the introductory paragraph into the, let's just deal with these questions, Kyle. That's just an introductory paragraph. It's really insignificant right now. We got to get through these questions. Anyone have feedback on number 6?
I do. I suggest, and I know this will make it a little longer and more complicated. The way it is now, if you say you don't support any housing, you then have no option to say like how much should be affordable, right? And people, even if you don't support the housing, you may want to weigh in on how much should be affordable. You see what I mean? If housing ends up being built.
So Michelle, you want a statement that says, I don't support any housing, but if there's going to be housing, I want it to be 30%.
That was my thought. Or,
That's too complicated, my dear. I don't know how.
Yes,
I think
that's
Yeah, I admit it is. I'm visualizing it as a little like indented, but if there is housing, you're right, it is complicated. I'll grant you that. But people may want to have a say, and this way they don't have any say at all if they say they don't want any housing.
Well, but they're giving an option, as many people have said many times here, to say they don't support any housing if that's their issue, right? They don't support any housing, period. So
Then it, yeah.
Well-
Another possible option, make it a little simpler, would be up at the top, say, and again, it's too common. If you don't support any housing, you can check two things, like that and up to 50% or whatever. Just a thought.
okay.
Tabulating it will be hard.
Yeah.
Any other comments on number 6? Okay, moving to number 7. Any comments on 7?
Yeah, I have just a typographical comment. When I looked at this first, I missed the check all that apply in both 7 and 8, because in 8 it's buried right in the middle. And my suggestion is to put it in italics or otherwise emphasize it, because it's kind of different than the rest of it, and I'm afraid people will miss it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's a good point.
Does that mean that you can say I do not support any housing, but still check off 2 and 3 bedrooms?
Well, you could.
That's what I would like to do. But you just said we couldn't do that, but you said we can do that.
That addresses my concern with the other one
Yeah,
Okay.
I know.
Okay.
and with the next one.
Okay.
What is
Think
the
about
change?
it.
We're trying to give people still the option here of those who are continuing on to take the survey, who've already indicated they don't support, right, any housing at the site, to continue to affirm that they don't support any housing at the site. I see the complexity here.
Yeah.
But let's maybe see how that works itself out. Indeed, do you actually think there are going to be people who check that and then check, I mean,
For
Yeah.
number 8, there will be, absolutely, because I think people will want to weigh in on that.
But 8, you
Some
can't
people
check all
believe
that.
strongly it should be very low income. Other people want it to be, 80%. So, with the idea that whether even if you don't want housing, there still may be housing here. So people will want to have a say.
but the thing about that is, Michelle, you're at another level of interpretation and reaction to the survey when you posit a conditional and then answer the question based on a conditional. Most people, my guess is, will test it and see. If it comes back that they say, I wanted to do that and I found it confusing, we'll have to fix
And
it.
we can fix it, right?
Yeah, but the check all that apply kind of takes care of that, I don't know.
Well,
Well, we'll see. We'll see.
Lisa,
but-
you might want to get rid of the check all that apply that is in the middle of 8.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Well,
But yeah, this otherwise that's good.
Yeah, okay. We got it.
As far as the italics.
I think number 8 is the most important one to have it with. 6 isn't as important.
okay, are we finished with 7? And Bruce, we're leaving check all that apply?
Yeah, I mean, let's leave it for now. And
Okay.
if there's
And then
somebody
on
out
number
there,
8,
Okay.
what do you want to leave it or take it off?
leave it.
Okay.
It's just that Jim's point was in the middle of the paragraph or the question stem, let's go ahead and delete where it appears right in the middle since you've added it to the end.
Yeah, that was all I was saying.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I didn't even see that.
Good catch.
Okay. All right, number 9.
So, it looks like you guys wanted to take out the 5333, but I thought that given that's such an oversized building, it ought to be there by contrast. And if we're gonna do it, I think you should also say how many stories it is.
Now, we're leaving 5333 out. I think Bruce, well, that's my preference, and still will be. I think Bruce made a good argument for, leaving the current zoning in there, leaving Livingston, which is 80 feet. So my major concern was to have comparisons roughly in line with the options. And we have 80 feet Livingston, and then Avalon is so well known. And I think people absolutely are going to recognize that. I think adding the Avalon kind of rounds it out.
Lisa, on this one, I disagree. I disagree with almost everything Bruce said. on this. I think that since there are people who are saying that what's going to happen at the Civic Core is they don't want another K-Fritz building, to make the point that the K-Fritz building is 103 feet tall or whatever it is, and 80 feet is being proposed here. People still have the option of not wanting 80 feet, but at least they will have a sense of how it compares to well-known things. I think the Avalon is important to have in there, but I also think 5333 and the Garfield are also, because they are not like in another neighborhood. They're right down the street and everybody knows them.
Hey, Ron.
I would also add, Bruce, just hold on a second. This business about the 36 feet on the community center, Mr. Goslin has insisted that when we talk about height, we include the penthouses.
It's not a penthouse.
It's not
yes, it is.
Mechanical.
Yes,
It's air conditioned.
Under zoning, that's a penthouse.
Oh,
The
sorry.
penthouses that are required on these other blocks are also not visible from the sidewalk because they're set back an amount equal to their height. So if you're walking along the sidewalk on McKinley Street, you look up, you will not see 80 feet. That's how the zoning works.
Can I add two things on that? One is I see from my window the so-called penthouses on top of the community center and library, and so people are going to see it. And as Ron said, you're going to include penthouses or you're not going to include penthouses. But you're saying, well, we're going to not include something because it's set back, but people are living there. But we're not going to include it if it's set back and no one's living there. I don't understand that.
I think.
But can I make just one other quick point? Is I don't think people know the Livingston apartment building. It's just not something that is like in common reference. People would have to go and look at it, and as opposed to, well, if I could just, as opposed to, and they also might confuse it with the Garfield, which I think is right across the street and is taller. Whereas 5333, I actually think everybody knows what it is, have a sense of it because there was a big deal about it.
And I would say I would put in contrast or by contrast if you're going to include 5333.
But the thing about it is, guys, is I don't, maybe you think everybody knows what 5333 is.
Yeah.
But I got news for you over here.
Yeah.
Knows what 5333
My
is.
district too. 3G01. Yeah.
They don't.
Just say the monstrosity at the intersection of.
They don't even know. They wouldn't even know. It's too far away. You say it's in the neighborhood. Well, yeah, we could go down Connecticut Avenue. Honestly.
Then you should give the Garfield. How about giving the Garfield in addition to the Livingston, which are both exactly as far away? But the point is,
Jim, here's the thing. Here's the thing. Why not cite a building that is the same height as the proposed zoning would allow?
That makes sense.
Why cite a higher building to say, well, it's not going to be as high as that?
Right.
You're producing a
because that is a piece of information that gives people an ability to understand what these heights in feet mean.
So
and
then
don't say 50, but Jim's right, nobody knows what the Livingston is. Then say the big white building in Military Road. Everybody knows that. And okay, so those of you who live in the outskirts, of the ANC may not be familiar, but I'm telling you, those of us who live nearby here know these buildings intimately. We pass by them every day.
Yeah.
You're in rarefied company, Ron.
We do too, Ron.
But they don't.
They pass by them every day.
They don't know the difference between the Livingston and the Garfield.
But we identify the location, Jim. There it is. The Garfield. People aren't going to know the Garfield any more than the Livingston.
Right.
Right.
So you think that's giving people information is they can put down the survey and get and walk down the street or get in their car to go see the Livingston?
Ron, here's the thing. The bottom line is it's a point of comparison. I think we're making too much of this. if we say in Livingston, it's a comparable, we can put the Avalon. We've got so many comparables here, data points.
Anybody else talk?
At the end of the day, it's great. We can put the
Bruce, give me one reason not to put 5333 in.
because
Well,
it's not 80. It's not 80 feet.
1
Ron.
inch. It's
It's
1
not
inch.
80 feet. It's taller than 80 feet. And
Right, right. So people who know that building will know that 80 feet is a lot shorter than that building. It's
and that's
1 inch.
Can we
and
stop this?
and the
and
aim,
somebody
the
else
aim
say
try to
something?
suggest it's shorter.
Let Andrea speak.
Andrea,
It's one
Andrea.
inch of type.
Andrea?
There are a lot of people waiting. I have a suggestion instead of the Avalon that you use the M&T building because it's the tallest building on the upper Connecticut Avenue strip. And everybody can picture kind of the way it juts up. And I think it's the only one that takes advantage of current zoning versus pre-zoning, which is what the rest of the buildings are. So that's my suggestion instead of the Avalon. And then
Okay.
my other idea was, oh God, okay, I've forgotten.
Okay, what we're gonna do.
Wait, can I speak? Is it my turn?
Very quickly, because we're at 8:30 and we're on question 9.
Okay, I have 3 points to make, now 4 with Andrea. I don't agree with doing M&T Bank for 2 reasons. One, a lot of people don't know it. Secondly, I think you shouldn't go with maybe the one that is the highest because my problem, current zoning along this stretch of Connecticut Avenue allows for 55 feet. My understanding is virtually all the buildings along this stretch are 40 feet, maybe 45. Obviously, a developer isn't going to tear it down for 10 more feet. So the point is, people, instead of thinking, oh, well, it's already 55, they need to know, no, virtually all of them are much lower. So keep the Avalon, and maybe the fact you have the Avalon in there is enough so people will understand. Most of it's 40 feet, not 55, and they won't become 55. They won't get redeveloped unless they're allowed more. Secondly, with respect to the penthouse, Ron's comments, remember, people are going to be using the back of this site to hopefully play pickleball or basketball or be in a playground. So it's not, what you see from the street is not the only thing that matters because people are going to be in the back of this site.
Setback applies.
I'm sorry.
Setback for penthouses would apply there also.
Well,
if you're including penthouses, on one, I actually think you got to include it on
But the difference in the penthouses are that earlier penthouses being not inhabitable and only for, mechanicals were proportionally very small relative to the whole size of the roof.
Ones on top
now they're larger and so they're visible at a closer.
I just got to tell you, I look out my window at the ones currently on the community center. It's not small.
Okay.
Okay.
And
we're gonna move on with this one. We will, between the 3, we'll talk about.
Can I make a quick comment?
Include, yeah.
Thank you. If I understood what was being said before, that the, I'm sorry, in terms of the penthouses or whatever you call them, that the community center should be referred to as a building that is 50 to 55 feet or something like that. I think if you say that in this survey, people are going to wonder what you're smoking because no one who looks at that building thinks of it as a building that is 50 to 55 feet tall.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right.
We'll work on this one. I think this is probably the one that maybe we'll think about the most. Okay, number 10. Any comments on that?
Can I just make my comment of why I wanted maybe as opposed to are? And I'll just explain why.
We know why, Jim, but go
No,
on.
well, no, this is very precisely is that they now say that 60% is the maximum you can build on that site. So if you can build a maximum of 60%, I think the likelihood is they're going to build 60%. Okay. And then they're going to build as tall as they can, but I don't actually see where they're going to be making a trade-off between taller and narrower and shorter and wider. I just don't see why that would necessarily happen. They're going to cover 60% of the site. But so maybe I'm missing something, but that's why I just don't see why it is necessary. Maybe under some circumstances it could be necessary.
Do I not remember Ron telling us that currently the open space at the site is 60%?
Right,
The
right.
numbers,
Robert
Gordon
Gordon measured it.
That
the
includes
numbers are
parking,
that
surface parking.
there's 30,000 square feet of usable and lawn area type open space on the site now. There's I believe it's 18,500 square feet of parking. 60%, if you put the parking underground and build at 60% lot coverage, the remaining open space is roughly the same as the 30,000 usable feet that are there now.
Ron, how do you define usable? Like the green space in the front of the library, which is large green space. Do you view that as usable, or
Yeah. That's I when I looked at it, I broke that out because it isn't really usable, but that's included in the usable number. It's non-vehicle, non-parking space.
I just say to Jim, one of the things I think we could be almost sure of is, given we're talking about all of these uses on a 1.73 acre site, there are going to be trade-offs. I mean, is there any building project? The simplest building project involves trade-offs. So
I saw that. I don't get it, because if they're, as far as on these issues of how much taller and narrower versus shorter and wider, that once you're at 60%, they're going to build 60%. I'm pretty confident about that. So who's going to be trading what? And so all I'm saying is just put maybe rather than are, because it may not be any.
I agree with Pete. There are going to be some trade-offs. The community is going to determine that in the RRP session. We're going to tell DMPEG what we want. And that's going to be the trade-off that they're going to need to meet. So there are going to be trade-offs. It's not going to be just, a building that goes up and they're going to use the maximum space. There's going to, the community is going to weigh in on all of this, and that's going to produce a trade-off. So I do think the "are necessary" language is the best and right language to have here.
Yeah, I would add its trade-offs to achieve affordable housing and open space.
I think that's stated. I think that's stated. I think
Can I
that's
ask
stated.
a question?
Yeah.
I don't understand the difference between choice number 3 and choice number 5. So if you say I prefer the density as just as it is, does that mean that the buildings that would go up would have to have exactly the same amount of density?
I think that's what this is trying to get at. Yeah.
And one of you proposed that.
Yeah, they did.
Oh, they proposed that.
Wouldn't have been me.
Okay. This is we're into the phenomenon of collective editing. We forget where these things even came from in the first place. Now we're going back looking at them as if they just magically appeared.
No, they came
You want to
from.
get rid of the last one on this one, just because it's about trade-offs. And if you can say I prefer the density as is, that's perfectly consistent with saying you don't support redevelopment at all, but it doesn't say one way or the other whether you support redevelopment.
No.
Yeah, I mean, maybe number 3 is all you need, and I have no preference, because are they the same, 3 and 5, pretty much?
Well,
I think so.
If we're going to take one out,
they're not the same.
No.
No.
All right, we can test it again and see if people have trouble with it.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, let's go to 11. Any comment, feedback on 11?
Too many items.
Okay.
Okay.
Other than that,
can we get rid of conversation station and free Wi-Fi?
Yeah.
well, we're trying to keep this to what DMPED has, and that's the because we want to compare apples to apples on the DMPED survey. So
I want a picture of a conversation station. Just kidding.
Do we know that it's different from benches and outdoor seating?
Yeah.
Okay. We might not know, but so guys, keep in mind that we incorporated the changes that we discussed last time, and we've asterisked those that are current amenities. Yeah. We bumped it to 7, and we've been around this fence post about 3 times.
Can I
Okay.
just say, didn't they say that the order of these would be randomized and they would be switched around in a random fashion for each?
They could be randomized. These are alphabetical.
I know they are,
Yes.
but I'm just saying they may not end up alphabetical. Also with playground and tot lot, it looks as if playground is a currently existing amenity, but in fact, it's not really a normal playground. It's really only suitable for small children. And in fact, it says that.
Well,
So,
but some people may not understand what tot lot means, that it is a playground granted for
well,
small
maybe you
kids. I
can
think it's
say-
harmless to have it like that.
No, I don't, because for older children who would like a playground, that doesn't exist. So
Well, I
if
think
you're
people
gonna-
know that.
But
I
it's
mean,
only
here they're saying what's important to them.
Yeah.
So
But there are
I
a
think-
lot of, okay, but, okay, fine.
whether
I'm not gonna argue it to the death, but-
whether or not a playground as distinguished from a tot lot exists now. This is a question that combined the previous existing amenities with the ones one would like to have. So if you want a playground / a tot lot, then you can indicate it here.
yeah, it's actually better to have it together.
Yeah.
I don't see that, but okay, fine.
Okay, we're gonna move on. Number 12, any feedback on 12?
We just have to confirm that the asterisk ones are actually things in the community center now, right? Or if we've missed them, and I don't know how we do that other than consult with DPR or go in there and look around. I know some of these are multi-purpose or got multi-purpose
Yeah,
room. This is a multi-purpose room.
Okay.
Anyway, we'll figure that out.
All right. Number 13, any feedback on 13? Okay. 14.
Just on 13, it's just, you have a series then of 3 questions, each of which has a dozen possible responses, and I'm afraid people are going to throw their hands up.
Oh, I think they'll definitely answer this. I mean, I can tell you, as you know, having a teenage son, late teens, I would be checking off a lot of this stuff. I think this is perfect.
Sorry, Lisa. Also, just to be clear with everybody, again, I know we said this before, but just to put it back in mind, these were on the DemPed survey that almost 1,700 people took.
Right.
So it was not apparently a difficulty on that survey, but we'll see on the test.
Yeah, it's a lot of good stuff on here. Okay, number 14. And 15. Any comment on those? Okay. Number
How realistic is this retail thing? Because you know, I mean, you had a coffee shop. My understanding is the West End Library, which people are mentioning coffee shop, is completely controlled and owned pretty much, or whatever, done by the developer. My understanding is that the city is going to keep, it's not going to be like that here. The city is may get a contribution from the developer to build the community or to do the community center library, but it's going to be different. It's going to be a city thing. So I don't know. I mean, maybe it's a harmless enough question, but you know, when Mayor Bowser already talked about if she had to pay for parking, she would have to cut back on other parts of the project, which for the city is the community center and the library. And then at one of the meetings, DemPed said, well, if we agree to only give up 60% of the lot size, again, they said we will have to cut back on the community center and or library. So I mean, I don't know.
At the West End Library, both the developer and the city saw value in coordinating the design of the cafe, which is run by a private operator, and the library, which is run by the city. And they designed it that way, and it works great. I don't understand what the problem is.
We're only going to have so much room here. And
you know, Michelle, you know, as your architecture background is impressive, But
Oh,
why
Mayor,
don't we
don't
let
be
the
so
architect?
dismissive, Ron
That was
Eichner.
so
Well,
nice.
why don't we let the architects
So
Yeah,
nice.
let's just
figure
trust
that
everyone.
out? If there isn't room, they won't build it.
Okay, I don't appreciate the snide comments.
Well,
Agreed.
I don't. Okay,
Agreed.
my bad. Sorry.
Okay, let's move on.
Can I just, wait a minute, can we just
Go
add
on, Cal.
slash library to number 15, community center slash library, because we don't know where it's gonna go.
I think that's a good idea.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely.
For number 15,
Yeah,
So we can just put community
don't
center
know-
library
we don't know
site
where the
as
cafe
we,
is
as
gonna
we
go.
referenced it before,
To go.
just to keep it consistent. I wouldn't put slash Lisa. I would just say a community center library site could include retail, right?
yeah.
And throw an and in there between community center and library.
And on 14, you know, I know that this is a watered down version of what I had suggested, but it sort of, my suggestion was that should there be an apartment building on this site, which is very likely, the ground floor of that building could be non-commercial community public facing uses in order to enliven the ground floor of the entire development, which is really different than saying we're going to have, you know, the implication here is some sort of, you know, basement community group space. You know, my suggestion was for an approach to the ground floor that doesn't rely on retail, but works to increase the vitality of the streetscape and the public space here. It's very different than this.
Yeah, I agree, Ron. I think though, you know, we are struggling with space. I think, you know, Susan has told us over and over, we are probably way beyond 10 minutes. So some of these were pared down, but I get what you're saying.
You know, one thing.
I appreciate the need for brevity, but you know, I gotta say it. I've said it to emails to you guys that I think what we're doing is we're missing an opportunity to do anything but complain to DemPed and OP about this, rather than offer suggestions for making this a great place.
I will disagree wholeheartedly.
You
No,
could make
this is not an opportunity to complain. This survey is going to give us useful information to provide feedback to them. There's nothing in this question that to me signifies complaining.
No, not in this question.
I have a suggestion of how to do. You could take the same change you just made to 15 and put it in that second sentence of 14 and just say a redeveloped community center and library site could include.
Yeah, but I don't think that gets at the heart of what Ron was talking about.
All right, just suggest.
Well, it could. It said you could say a redeveloped community center and library site could include at the ground level blah 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 blah, and you know.
I mean, so you're basically saying changing a new facility to a community center and library site. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that would be my thing.
Yeah, and leave in somewhere at the ground level, because that's sort of the key here.
Go ahead, Liz.
Thank you. I think what you're doing is conflating two different things. People may want retail or they may want offices, and if you put it in the same question, they get jumbled up and they no longer are separate ideas that people can react to.
Yeah, so that's why there's two separate questions.
Yeah.
Well, you're proposing to put them all in one question.
No, I'm proposing to change the language of 14 to be more similar to the language in 15, as Jim suggested.
Yeah, I'm okay with saying a redeveloped community center and library site could include. The only element there, Ron, about putting it at the ground floor is that it introduces then something for the respondent to think about. Oh, the ground floor. You have in your mind how that could enliven the space and create a more dynamic facility. but it doesn't convey, it's just in there as additional information, and it's like, okay, the ground floor.
Well, why don't you say at the end then, do you believe space for such organizations at the ground floor would, in whatever your language was, enliven the entire facility?
Because they wouldn't have a basis to answer that. How would they know, right? I mean, they would have to have more specialized knowledge. We've got the question here, and we took your earlier suggestions. We try to fashion something that indicates space for these non-commercial community groups. That's a particular thing we're asking about. Anyway, I think we're,
Well,
Again, you missed the essence of what I was suggesting.
Ron,
but-
I got it. I know,
Yeah.
I get the essence of the
already.
question. You're wanting to add more value into it from the perspective of how it would benefit the community. The thing that I would
Yes.
say about this survey and other processes is that folks in the community, through the DEMPED process and the iterative nature of it, when ultimately there are proposals or design schemes presented, are going to be able to weigh in
Yeah.
at that time, with much greater information about what enhancing the ground floor would be like. I don't think we can embed enough information in this for the question about the ground floor to be meaningful.
And
That's
there's no guarantee it'll be on the ground floor.
Right. It's hard to even know that.
Yeah, that's my kind of thing too. I mean, if the ANC office was on the second floor, I'd be happy. I don't need the ground floor. I'd take second and third floor. I mean,
The end of the sentence just says community center, so you either have to add and library or just end it at
at
appropriate.
the redevelopment.
How about just saying would be appropriate and stuff?
Yeah, that's what I would suggest.
I think it's clear what it means, I think.
Yep, that shortens it. For sure. Okay.
All right.
Okay, we did 15. The last one is 16, underground parking. Any feedback on that?
Wait a minute. Now let's say as well as local businesses and venues. Are we really going to have space for that? Come on. I mean, you're going to have at least 30. Currently, we have 31 parking spaces there, surface. You desperately need to maintain either above or below ground that amount of parking for the library and community center. Then there will need to be parking for the apartment building, if there is one. And it's extremely expensive. Are we really going to have an underground lot that is available for the local businesses and venues?
Bruce, where did that insert come from? Local businesses and venues.
I have to say, I've heard Fruman say this is exactly what he wants. He's heard it a number of times.
Who's going to pay for that? I mean, come on. And plus, there's only so much space. Those buildings have basements.
Hang on a minute, Bruce. Where did this come from?
In the Paleolithic age of, a million years ago, somehow somebody proposed this and we incorporated it as a suggestion. I can't remember exactly where it came from.
This is going to be something that isn't going to happen. And this is really inaccurate.
But just as a matter of, I don't know, common sense, if people park in the community center, if there is underground parking there, they could go to a local business, right?
Well, right now that parking says, people can do it, but it's illegal. Right now the parking says it is only for using the library and community center.
Bruce is exactly right. This is Jurassic. This question goes back so deep into discussions in the small area plan. I don't remember who brought it up, but somebody brought up that if you're going to get rid of parking lot behind CVS or behind Magruder's or whatever, that maybe it should be replaced by underground parking at the community center. It was always every bit as silly as Michelle makes it, but it's had a half-life. It always seems to pop up.
We can lose it. I don't care.
I'm
Let's
sorry,
leave
it's
it.
crazy.
Well, wait a
There we
minute, leave the part that says for access to the site, no?
No,
Well,
you don't
That's
need that.
assumed, right?
It's
Yeah,
redundant.
that's assumed.
Are you guys are okay with doing this, even though Fruman has said, I've heard him like say 2 or 3 times, and he looks serious when he says it, that this exactly, he uses like those words. or
No, I
very
think
close.
that was a bid to win friends.
Well, it may be, but he's our council member and he seems to, you know, I don't know, I've just
I-
raised that.
But we're not saying here though, Jim, that they couldn't. We're not
I know,
making
okay,
any
I'm just
judgments
saying,
about how they could use the parking, right? I think if we do this, we're good.
Yeah, I think
Politically, we're not
safe.
doing this for him, we're doing this to get the community sentiment.
Right.
Is there any possibility of parking for the apartment building residents? What are they gonna do?
Well, I'm sure that I take that into consideration.
Well,
Boy,
there
that-
is zoning. Zoning requires a certain amount of parking.
A small amount, but yeah, I mean, obviously
Yeah.
some of this will be for the residents, but it won't be
It's
enough.
it's probably like 1 to 6 or something like that for this
So, Lisa,
location. I don't know.
Lisa, I only have one final question.
Okay.
What are you guys all going to do on your Tuesday nights when this process is done?
God no.
Done, Bruce. It's never gonna be done.
That's gonna be
Can't
months.
wait.
You know, I feel like hosting a dinner and have everybody come over and we can all.
So let's
I think we'll have to come in 2 different groups, but
That's gonna be
No,
amazing.
no, we could come together and we could all bring a dish to share.
that would be nice.
good.
It's gonna be
can I
one-
just say one thing to think about again, which I've already said, and I keep looking at it and it keeps bothering me. If you could go back above just to the last question, because it's true. Stop. It's true of many of these questions. This I do not support, and other people in my camp weigh in if you see the problem here. I do not support any redevelopment of the community center and library site. I think virtually everyone would say, I would like it to at least be modernized, okay? And this kind of makes it sound like, don't touch it, keep it the way it is. I mean, it makes it sound like you don't even want them renovated. What?
People have said that, Michelle.
It's
I'm sorry,
another
what?
loaded question, Michelle.
I know
There
they
are
said it.
people on the
that.
list, sir.
Oh,
There are,
I'm just making sure you think about it.
But
Oh,
people
yeah.
on the list, there are people on the listserv that says, I love our quaint library with our quaint lands, this regardless of what other people say.
Absolutely.
Don't touch
And
it.
you know what? I think they might represent the majority of the community. Here we are on a meeting with 3 developers. Here we are, some people in the neighborhood who really do care deeply about the community. And we're having a gigantic discussion with 3 developers. I just do not get this scenario.
Who are the 3 developers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who are the 3
Gee,
developers?
I wonder, who are they?
Who are they?
No, I'm very serious. Who are they?
Well, I think it's pretty clear that the 3 people who have spent the entire meeting bragging about their great credentials
Who is that?
are the ones who are obviously in the developer, as one of you put it earlier, on the developer side.
Well, I'm a real estate, you know, I don't want to argue with you, but I am a developer, but I also have great credentials. And there are no other developers on this call.
But just
Who's bragging about their credentials and their knowledge?
Cheryl,
Yeah,
Let's just move on.
We're out of order. I don't want to mute everybody.
All right,
We're out of order.
I'll mute myself.
Let's finish up. And
Excuse me, could I make a suggestion,
we
please?
need diverse perspectives. We also have many community members on this. I mean, Cheryl, aren't you a real estate agent?
I am.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
I'm not a commercial developer,
Okay.
and I'm a resident that cares deeply about the community center and library.
Yeah. So I think people.
And I
mean,
don't
that's
want
like-
our neighborhood to end up looking like Petworth or South Bethesda.
And I think we got all neighbors on this call, all neighbors that are deeply concerned about it. So
Lisa,
yes.
To pick up on what I think it was Andrea was just saying, I've always felt this language, I do not support any redevelopment of the community center and library site. is confusing. I'm not even sure right now what it means. I think and I think it appears in a number of other questions, does it not? And yeah. I think what you mean is, I think what it's meant to mean is, I prefer a refurbished or whatever.
No, that's not what it means.
Not what it means?
What does it mean?
It means
exactly
what it says. I do not support any redevelopment. I do not support it. We could say any building, any changes, anybody to touch it. I mean, we could make it simple, but I think most people reading this will understand it means I don't want the community center library site redeveloped. And a lot of people in the community have called for that.
I don't think that's what the word redevelopment means. And I think the word redevelopment is confusing. I don't really know how you redevelop a library. I know how you refurbish one or modernize it or replace it. I don't know how you redevelop.
I agree. I think it's a confusing term.
Okay.
For this
Well,
use,
we'll see in testing. We'll see when we test it out what the feedback is on this question. And we'll keep that in mind because we use redevelop all throughout the survey.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
you know, like
jump in here, guys, and ask a question. And to the point you're trying to make here, and as I understand it, would it change things if we said, I do not support the city's proposed redevelopment of the community center and library site, which has been defined previously in the preamble to the survey? That's what the whole survey is about.
But we know that, but people taking it, you know, they're not going to think back, oh yeah, well, that's what it means.
Well,
I think it has to be very clear within the question.
Well, the testing, I think Bruce will bear this out.
Yeah, we'll look at
it. I just don't think this point is controversial, and I don't see why the wording would not be, you know, to distinguish between modernizing, refurbishing, a new one, and nothing.
How would you change it?
I'd have to, you know, when we don't get these, and it's not, I'm not saying it's your fault at all, Bruce. You've worked.
No. I don't care about it being my
I'm
fault.
just saying when you said, how would you change it? When we don't have these drafts ahead of time, it's very hard in the moment to be reading, thinking, revising. It's just very hard to do.
Yeah.
Welcome to the world of ANC. Yes, it is. I'm glad you recognize that.
One possibility. First off, for this question, you could just change it to "I do not support underground parking," but that would make it easy.
But no in general, is the same thing.
What?
No is the same thing.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right.
No.
Oh, well, that's just saying I wouldn't use. Okay, cool.
Michelle, can I just quickly interject this? The idea of having this standard response category is to stay true to those who at the very beginning said they do not support redevelopment.
Right.
If you need to continue that as a response category throughout where appropriate, so that people have an option if they're taking this question at all. Otherwise, you would say, stop taking the survey after question whatever, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right?
Okay. But I'm just curious what you all think, and then I have a suggestion. If someone said, I want to keep like the building footprint, or even I want to keep the outer part of the building, but I agree, I would like the community center to be renovated and modernized inside, or there are those who don't need to keep the whatever. They don't care about keeping the structure. They're like, give me a new library and community center, but that's it. I don't want any housing. I do not support any redevelopment. Does that include someone saying, I do want a new of these things or a modernized? So
I don't think it does, Michelle. And I think we tried to address that in that question on trade-offs, where we say we want the density to remain the same. But again, it's 9:05 and we're just getting this for testing. So Susan explained the testing process. We'll really be able to see. She has an excellent process for testing these questions. We'll really be able to see where the confusion is. And if this, you know, the redevelopment wording or something like that, if we see that come back in testing as unclear and causing issues, we'll come back to it. This is not the final, so.
I mean, one possibility is like in parentheses have other than needed other than whatever.
Yeah,
renovation or something, or modernization.
Just to be clear, that goes back to question number one. It isn't
Yeah.
this question, right? It goes back to the very beginning if we need to change this, and we'd have to track it all the way through.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, it wouldn't be that hard.
It would not be.
Well,
hard.
yeah.
I have to
I
say
can
also,
say.
there are other places where you haven't put in these other alternatives. And, you know, if you're going to start doing that, there might be other alternatives that you should put
But-
into, I would suggest.
Okay.
But wait,
Yeah,
that's
this-
that's not an equivalency, redevelopment and renovation.
No.
Yeah, you would say
not.
other than renovation. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's some-
It's other than.
But it goes
'Cause
back to
there's a
question- it
lot
goes
of
back to
people-
question number one,
Yeah,
Well-
no, that's not. Now, this is to address the people that don't want that building, that site touched, period.
But the problem is there are a lot of people that do want it touched, but they don't want housing added.
Right.
And I thought we addressed that earlier on in the survey.
It's just that all these questions are, I do not support any redevelopment. Okay,
Yeah,
I'd have to
we'll
look
take-
at the whole thing,
Yeah.
but
We'll take a look at it, Michelle. We'll take another further look at it.
Could I make a final comment, which is it's so difficult to do this in the moment. It's so difficult to take it in and to make any kind of helpful, useful, intelligent comments without having seen this in written form ahead of time. Could you possibly post this on the ANC website so that we could look over this language with a little more, leisure than seeing it, some of it.
So, Elizabeth, let me just address that from two perspectives. One is manpower. The person that was doing our web work, my son, was doing it for free, and he's back in college. So we don't have anyone right now posting. I post when I get the opportunity. I am not the webmaster of ANC 3G. We don't have one. So that's the manpower issue. And two, we're on a timeline here. We're going to get this out and get this test. This is our last meeting on this language. We're getting this out and we're getting it to the testing group, hopefully by the end of the week. We have got to get this out. Our RFP meeting with DMPED is October 14th. And I think the last one is the 18th. So if we're to get them some, feedback in time to incorporate into the RFP, we have got to get this out.
Excuse me, may I ask a question? What is the rush? Why can't DMPED push its meeting with you past October 14th/18th?
Oh, I can tell you, they're under a timeline too from the mayor's office. The
mayor is actually our mayor, right? She's
well,
our
representative. You just asked me a question. I'm giving you the answer because I've talked to them extensively about this.
So
They're on a timeline to get this done. They have a certain timeline, and they pushed it back for us quite a bit, going back to some of the earlier meetings. So we probably pushed this project back a couple of months at least. They just can't afford to push it back anymore. So, I'm not going to ask them to push this process back for this survey. I'm just not going to do that. I mean, we have taken months to develop it, and we've gotten it to a point where we're ready to test it and we're ready to get this out and rolling. The wording might not be perfect. We'll come back on testing and see where the issues are, and then we have to adjust it from there. So we'll be meeting every Tuesday until and after this survey gets out. There's an opportunity to still continue to, fine tune the survey process.
Excuse me, but I've also been patiently waiting to make a comment about question 16, and that is, if what you mean by I do not support any redevelopment of the community center and library site is that I do not support any changes to the site, why not say that? Because I must agree with Elizabeth and Michelle, that saying redevelopment will say to people, I don't want this site, I don't want the library modernized. So put in a separate question, another question that says, I do not support any changes.
Can you, Lisa, can you put up question 1 just so, because you said that's where all this is handled.
I don't know. Yeah. I do not support any redevelopment.
Then you need consistency between you need consistency.
Okay, I support redevelopment only to modernize a community center and library.
And then I do not support any. So it's a separate thing. If the problem is we just have, I do not support any to all the following questions.
Yes.
And a lot of people are at number 2, only to modernize.
We will take this into consideration and
it's all good feedback, guys. It's all good.
Aren't your consultants going to make this a consistent survey from the first question to the last?
Cheryl,
yes.
Yes, it's all absolutely. Yes.
Because right now it's very inconsistent and some of the questions are truly convoluted.
They will review that.
Cheryl, but the thing of it is that you and others have sat through this process with us and have understood how we've tried to accommodate a wide variety of inputs from you and from others, which makes it sometimes not only difficult, but convoluted.
Yep.
So,
It's an unclear question. You're not going to get an answer.
Well, we're working with within the process of a very open community engagement on the survey. Yes, indeed, we'll take another look at it, refine it throughout the testing, try to eliminate any inconsistencies and make it as a good a product as we possibly can. I just have one question, though, that I want to ask everybody. I want to know that throughout all of this, I want to ask the question, if you feel that you've been heard in your concerns, your comments, even if obviously in every instance we haven't incorporated every suggestion.
Is this an effort to check a box to say that you've had adequate community involvement?
Cheryl, you're on the call, and you know what? It's not to check the box. I do this frequently with all of my constituents. I say,
do you know how many hours of our life we have lost?
Yes, I do.
No, so we do not do this lightly or to check a box. If we wanted to check a box, we would have just said, no, we're not doing it, and we would have moved on like the other ANC.
Bruce, I'd like to comment on that. I definitely feel heard, but I don't feel I've been heard at my best. And that's because what I said before, without having a written document in front of me, I'm, having it ahead of time in front of me to work on and rework, it's just been almost impossible. So yes, I feel I've been heard, but I feel I've been heard at a very low level and I could have done a lot better.
But let's do this. Let's send you the survey that you're seeing on the screen. And we're going to proceed with the test. The test is going to go on, as we've indicated. Take another look at it. Feel free to weigh in. Give us any further comments. Lisa's point is we have to proceed with the test, but you can continue to add your input. Continue to give us your thoughts. That way you'll have it in writing. And I believe 1 or 2 have been posted because we considered this at the ANC meeting.
Yep.
And we've gone through multiple iterations in real time, but I'm happy for one commissioner, Peter, Lisa, weigh in to give everybody the draft and let them continue.
I have no problem with that. I mean, I just don't want the community to get false hopes on, keeping up with this web work, because it is another job. And, I would have to do another hour tonight. And it's just, it's unrealistic. So
I'll come and help you type. I'll come and help you type.
It's not about typing.
I'm joking.
Oh, okay. Well, I wish it was as easy as typing, but it's web mastering, and that's something, that can take a lot of time.
So we'll send the survey to you.
How are you going to send the survey to us?
Email it to you.
Pardon?
Email it.
You have everybody's email?
Well, I've got yours. And if we don't have all your email addresses, then send them to me Send me your email addresses. I'll send it to you. Lisa can send it to you. This is not a
The only one that I don't know if I have is Robin's. I know I got everybody else's, but I don't know if I got Robin's.
Send it to me and I'll send it around.
Okay, so what we'll try to do is we'll incorporate these changes that we're making tonight, right?
Yeah.
And we'll send it to you.
Great.
Okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
and for future reference, though there probably won't be a future, but if you do a survey next year like this, maybe instead of posting it on the website, just the people that have been coming to these meetings could email you like the day before or the morning before saying, oh, please send me a copy of it before the meeting, something like that. Just a thought.
Right.
Because it's only the people that have really been involved in this that really need
Yeah.
to see it. But I also understand, I think you guys are probably working on this up until the last minute with your revisions. So that could be hard. And I understand that.
Yeah.
But Michelle, we were told last week that we would get a copy of it before this meeting. And really, they only have to send it to one person because I'll distribute it to everybody on this list.
Well, I mean,
it's for the ANC to do that.
I sent my changes around. I was in federal jury duty for the past 2 weeks. They got my changes today at 4:30. So
yeah,
But,
I mean,
but Cheryl will send you we'll send you this document. So you'll have another opportunity to weigh in. You can email us any thoughts, any comments.
I want to make a comment that Lisa, when we began this process, was clear, and I think she may have even said this in an ANC meeting, that everybody, the commissioners who are on this survey committee, value all the feedback they're getting. Not all of it is going to be incorporated, and I just want to remind you of that. And stuff that I said is not going to be incorporated. So
that's right.
Yeah, I think you have been tasked with a very difficult thing. You have had people with widely divergent views on this weighing in with extremely opposite suggestions. And, I don't necessarily agree with everything, but I do think you have done a good job trying to listen to people and trying to be fair. Again, I may not agree with it all, but I think you've done your best and have listened to people. And it's hard because people have really different views, especially the people involved in this. So
I second all that.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
And we've got the test, right? So at the end of the day, it's all of what we think, but it's also all of what the folks who have no idea about this think as they take this, and it's got to make sense to them.
Right.
So we'll see how all that goes. But I just want to say that I enormously value all your input. I know Lisa does too, and Peter does too. I'm just speaking. I can speak for myself. I think it's great. I appreciate all of your input. We've benefited from it. We've made innumerable tweaks based on it. And so we'll take it to the test and see how it goes. And at the end of the day, we'll roll with it.
Yep. And we'll keep returning here Tuesdays. So stay on. And I think Bruce had an excellent suggestion, because as we get the feedback in from the testers, then we'll add the feedback that you guys have. And then we'll go at it, one more round before we send out the final survey. So I just, most importantly, I don't want anyone to come out of the meeting tonight feeling, that we are done with the situation, because the testing is very important. And we've never done that. So, I mean, we're doing a lot of different things in this survey process that we haven't done. And that is a critical component of it. And we'll have that feedback. We'll share it with you. And if we need to make tweaks, that's what we're going to do.
Is there a schedule for the testing? Or did I miss that?
You
As
missed
soon as
it?
possible.
Yeah, as soon as
Yeah,
possible.
right.
It's gonna go out
I
quick.
figured.
It's
Well,
going to
no,
go out quick.
we've got to do a couple things. We have to make these changes. We have to put it into SurveyMonkey. We have to make sure that it looks right there. So this is all going to happen as quickly as possible in the coming days. So, it's hopefully we would be able to get it. Today's Tuesday. So whatever, certainly by early next week, put it in the field.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, one last comment regarding the timetable and specifically the mayor, which is if the mayor can change the timetable on the bike lanes, she could do so on this if needed, if need be.
You have to, Elizabeth, we have pushed hard to keep moving back time. I mean, let me remind you that in mid-November of last year, for the first time ever, having done 2 years of the small area planning process, we had the word surplusing sprung on us, and we were told there was going to be a hearing, and the only hearing in the middle of the holiday season, and we pushed back on that. And all through this period, we pushed back. One of the things you have to believe from us is that we need to represent what our best reading of what we can get from the city is. And I mean, she is your mayor, but that doesn't mean she's going to listen to you or us. And we pushed back the timeline repeatedly here. And I think Lisa is trying to bring a sense of reality to this. That if we get this out and we start fumbling around with this, as homemade as this survey is, for all the deficiencies all of you have pointed out, this is a community-built survey of this community. But if we keep fumbling around and we don't get it out to January or February, absent some miracle, the city is just going to go right on by us. And so I mean, it's our best reading of what we can get on behalf of this community. Now, if you think you can mount something more powerful that as the mayor, I mean, have at it. But I mean, I think that our reading is pretty solid about where she is, and that means that's where DemPed is.
Yeah,
DemPed's going to move whether you like it or we like it. So we're trying to have as much influence as we can on what happens there.
Why did she move on the bike lanes, Peter? Do you know?
I don't. I mean, I think the business.
Does it have to do with the fact that she became
I
educated?
think it was the business community that turned the tide on that.
Well, I think it was also the fact that Lee Mayer stood in her office and cited some statistics that were on DDOT's website that the DDOT folks in the same office were not even aware of. And at that point, it was kind of a turning point. So it was actually an education of the mayor in that meeting. And if there's a similar education of the mayor in a similar meeting, then I think it's quite possible that it's not a foregone conclusion, which is what I think I'm hearing you say.
I'm not sure it's a foregone conclusion. I think the schedule is going to be very hard to move. And I think that's a realistic, I mean, look, maybe we could have done more. Maybe we could push further. Maybe we'll have to push further because this process is taking so long. But I mean, I think that the thing that is our reading is we're unlikely to be able to move her is the schedule. And so I think we've got to press forward now. That's my 2 cents on that.
And we don't really know why the mayor did it. We can make these assumptions that it was because she needed to be educated. We don't know. She didn't state it. So it's sort of conjecture.
okay.
Someone enlightened her about how many people actually used bikes, Cal.
Okay, with that,
I
good
would
night,
say that I just,
everyone.
sorry, I just want to say, Peter, thank you for your comments and to answer Bruce's question. Do we feel heard? I think in the beginning, it really felt like you guys were getting pushed by the mayor's office in DemPed. And and I feel like you've started hearing us and slowing things down, and I really appreciate that. And so in that way, yes, I think we have been heard, and it's a huge wall of pushing back against the mayor and the developers, and I appreciate that you have done that. And in the space in which you've done that, I feel like we've been heard, and so I appreciate that.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, and to be continued, right? Because we've got more to go, as
We
Lisa
got a
said.
long way to go. Yep. Okay,
right.
everybody keep your strength up.
Okay.
See you next Tuesday.
Thank
The
you.
recording, Lisa.
It'll end when, if you hit end, it'll stop it.
Well, it will save.
Good night, everybody.